Shall we?
Now, to the bird's eye view, Netflix has become one of the pioneer companies in all of animation as of late. With hits across all demographics, genres, and forms, they've got amazing animated shows like BoJack Horseman and Arcane, as well as movies like The Mitchell vs. the Machines and Klaus, and you could honestly say that they're pushing the envelope. But when you deeper analyze everything that they've been doing, they've got more of a middling track record. Now, if you know anything about Netflix, Netflix's content model is throwing things at the wall and then canceling everything you love. They've wound up creating so many bad movies over the years that it's absolutely insane, and most of the originals they put out just wind up in disaster, but at least a lot of them are like a fun kind of disaster. You see a lot of videos talking about things like The Kissing Booth or any of the bad animated shows, and you see it because it's like a lot of fun. But so, they recently released a new animated film called Marmaduke, and I became absolutely bored today because my semester is over and boredom just happens after that. So I loaded up Netflix and I watched it. So, a further preface is, I have like no connection to Marmaduke at all. I know there was like a terrible 2010 live action animated hybrid film because that was the thing back then. And then there's also a newspaper comic that the character like debuted in. But aside from those two things, I've had no experience. And so that means that this is my first exposure to the virus. And oh my gosh, I am so sorry to Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, because this film's without a doubt the worst film I've seen from 2022. Now, if you're a veteran of my channel, as some people here are, this is my first like a bad film specific review. I don't normally do this, and I'm not going to really be doing this too much in the future. I just want to preface that with these critiques that I'm giving here, I don't mean any ill will towards the people who made this film. I'm sure the animators were probably put on crunch time, as animators are, and the actors are all like just here for the paycheck, which like fair enough, money in this capitalistic society is needed. But in addition, most people who do these cinematic disaster type reviews do it in a Let's Watch format where they just like go through scene by scene and examine everything that's wrong with it. I'm not for that. That's just not my style. And instead, I'm going to just break this film into content and form and dissect the elements of each category. So, with that said, let's get Marmaduked. To get through this plot as like efficiently as we can, Marmaduke starts the film in his room because he's a bad dog who's messy and the son of this family's birthday party is happening. And it's just not a place where they want the dog to get messy. So as this party's going on, Marmaduke gets distracted and just winds up getting out of the room and destroys the whole party by jumping into a pool, flooding the neighborhood. Now, the family seems sad, but actually Marmaduke goes viral, and a world-famous dog trainer named Guy Hilton catches an interest in the dog as a challenge to train, and gets the family to help him train Marmaduke because there's a $1 million prize for like a major competition. This is the most I can fix him person ever. Sir, you cannot. So Guy proceeds to try and train Marmaduke and eventually actually gets him up to skill for like a smaller dog contest. And here we meet the enemy dog named Zeus, played by J.K. Simmons, who's just really snotty and condescending. So Zeus then gets Marmaduke to like eat before the show. And then Marmaduke becomes gassy and just ruins everything about the smaller show, causing Guy Hilton to stop training Marmaduke. And now the family of Marmaduke's just being made fun of by the world because their dog sucks, because he does. So Guy now charges the family like money for the training, because that's a thing. And Marmaduke then sets out on his own. He goes to Guy and tries to beg for a second chance. Guy says no. And to prove he's extraordinary, Marmaduke just travels across the whole world in this like 1 minute 2D sequence, recapturing his fame and then trying to get a second shot from Guy, who still says no because Guy's the worst. So Marmaduke's family shows up and convinces Guy to give him a second shot in the world's best like pet show thing. And this majority of the movie, this early part, is pretty pointless. The pet show happens and just all of the competitors are racial stereotypes. We're gonna get into that later, but it's a pretty noted thing about this movie. So Zeus tries to sabotage Marmaduke and just succeeds to knock Guy Hilton out in the final round. So Marmaduke isn't allowed to compete, except yes he can, because his family volunteers to be his trainer in Guy Hilton's place. So in the final round, Zeus wins, and then it's revealed that actually no, his owners cheated. It wound up going to the dog, who's a Chinese stereotype because that exists in 2022. So Marmaduke and Zeus fight, but Zeus tries to get his win, and gets kind of knocked out, but a tower nearly falls down on the family's son, and Marmaduke saves the son, but gets hit by the tower and hecking dies. Except no. And that's basically how this movie ends. That's Marmaduke, my friends. Now, the mere act of saying this plot summary was a lot, but this film has no sense of pacing whatsoever. If an obstacle appears, there's just there to stop the plot, and then there's some way out of the decision, whether the character's just changing their mind, or the film completely pulling something out of nowhere. In general, this is a plot that's not throwing itself any bones, because it's generic. But while there's not really anything wrong with a plot being generic, a generic plotline makes everything else about a film that's bad feel way worse. Meanwhile, any of this film's attempts at jokes just feel like they all appeal to the lowest common denominators and nothing more, or as the film imagines that line to be children. They're all your just standard fart jokes and pop culture little references headlining this thing. And I'm not gonna roast this too much because it's just the standard complaints that you've heard that these jokes just don't work. And yeah, not a single joke in this movie works for the comedy at all or anything. Now, the plot's bad, but what about the characters? Because, oh gosh, this is one of the blandest casts you could ever come up with. Marmaduke is your standard messy and dumb dog who has a heart of gold. He's incredibly miscast by the decision to put Pete Davidson in the starring role, and Pete Davidson just is giving the worst performance of his life and the worst performance in this movie. Meanwhile, his trainer Guy Hilton is also incredibly unlikable. Guy essentially plays the deuteragonist of the film, and being the world-class dog trainer who's here to train Marmaduke. The one positive I can give him is Brian Hull is at least trying, because he's Brian Hull and he's actually a really entertaining voice actor. But the direction and the writing weigh this character down so much. Guy's just unlikable though, and everything just is filtered through his own ego. Him getting injured was indeed a scene, and it made his entire character arc feel unconcluded, removing the biggest non-Marmaduke player right before the actual climax. Now, talk about Marmaduke's family. This is just a really bland group of characters. The mom does nothing all movie aside from hoping Marmaduke gets the best, and every scene she's in basically has just that happen. She does nothing. Meanwhile, the older sister is a cheerleader who's liking the new attention from the dog until everyone turns on her, and then she hates Marmaduke because he's viral in the bad way, and she's incredibly unlikable and does nothing all for the film. The father's only in it for the money. He's just also immensely unlikable in every scene that he's in. But there's also a son who loves Marmaduke unconditionally. He's bland too. Ultimately the best member of the family, but still bad and frustrating to watch, as everything with this film. Now, the other dogs in this movie has racial stereotypes in it. So one of the dogs in this film is from Mexico, and then his favorite food that's focused on in the obedience challenge is a taco, because of course we love socially aggressive films still being released in 2022. And then also one of the other dogs is Chinese and has a lot of stereotypical traits of the magical Asian, which is just really bad to see in a film like this. And there's also a stereotypically French poodle love interest and a British dog who can muscle anything. That's kind of it for a lot of the other characters aside from one. Now, finally, there's Zeus, who's Marmaduke's rival dog, who's played really poorly by J.K. Simmons. Usually J.K. Simmons is amazing in a film like this, but honestly, every single line they got from him here feels like it's a first read, and that's just really uncomfortable to see in your fully polished animated film that you attempted to release onto Netflix in 2022. Zeus is a cheating, snobbish rival, I think a Squilliam type, and he's just really bland and not a good villain or presence in the movie. This is Baby's first antagonist. Gross. So, moving on from the content style stuff of a film, how is the form of how this movie goes about? The looks, the feels, the sounds. Well, in case you've been second tabbing this review like I do when I'm watching reviews, the animation's beyond terrible. I think it's genuinely one of the worst looking films I've ever seen, and for starters, these character designs suck so hard. If you're looking for a cast, you'd want to question who the main characters are with how generic they look. Not to mention a lot of the characters have literal toothpicks for limbs, and it's just very ugly, it's unappealing, dogs, humans alike. don't watch this film. Now, also, whenever this film tries to use, like, texture, you know, a major thing when you're doing 3D animation, from character first to how it depicts film, it's just looking really bad, especially the water effects. This just feels so cheap, and even when the film tries to go into a different style for sequences, such as when Marmaduke runs across the entire world just for a little point, it feels very cheap, and the style is very lazy, and it does not work for this film. Now, we know that the film looks like absolute human garbage, and the acting is not very good at all in this, but what about the background music? And this is just one of the worst soundtracks ever. Every single thing feels so generic, and the energy is never what the scene needs, even if it's there, and it's really, really bad, and I'm done talking about this film, guys. And I think that just covers about every single thing about this film. Marmaduke's a disaster. Nothing within this film works at all, and it's honestly the reason why people say Netflix is dying. Instead of going for new artsy projects, they cover things like Marmaduke, and it adds nothing to the world of film. This should just never be watched by anyone ever. I'd give it like a 1 out of 10. Good news! You finished watching this video of mine, so I know something like this, which is like a longer form normal review, is untraditional for my channel, and I wanted to get a smaller scale project out before new things that I have planned for the end of May, early June period, because I've got the next entry of the Ultimate Retrospective all researched, and I'm currently in the writing process of it, and it's most likely coming out in early June, continuing the every 2 months trend of that series. But in addition, I want to work on a special video essay plan for the end of this month, covering like one of the best works of 2021. Honestly, these two projects are going to be my last major projects before I go on summer break and work on my job at a summer camp, so I hope you enjoy them. Now, while I'm on break, partially because I like making videos, and partially because I need to help with the gods of the YouTube algorithm, I'm gonna get some smaller content scheduled to go out, hopefully something once a week, for like smaller projects, just to floof in my channel a little more. And I think it'll be a good time if I can prep and schedule these things after I get the 2 major projects done. August, though, this channel is going to be back in full swing, and I won't have a major dry spell for a while. So thank you so much for just watching this video, and I hope to see y'all in the future. As the YouTubers say, like, comment, and subscribe, my fellow kids. Gosh, I said those words. But, like, genuinely, I enjoy meeting everyone who joins here. The channel has been growing nice and steadily. It's a small lad, but it's still very fun to do projects for. So if you guys subscribe, though, you get to see my future content whenever that shows up into the world, because the subscriptions feature is really neat, and the more y'all watch of my content, just the better things are, you know? I get enjoyment out of making these videos, and having y'all here for it is half of why I get so much enjoyment out of these. So seriously though, just like, thank you so much for like everything. I've been starting this, and now that I'm on breaks, it's so great to get to do this again and some more. So enjoy yourselves and have a fantastic and lovely rest of your day. The One and Only Phineas, out.